Deep within the human psyche lurks the concept of monsters, but these are most often confined to the realms of legend and folklore. But our story reveals something much more tangible and therefore much more horrifying, for it demonstrates that there are still places on the earth where such things do in fact exist. Our tale is called Island of Terror, and this dark, foreboding destination is the perfect repository for it. After all, it is the Nightfall radio show. Upon studying the writings of little-known Spanish explorer Antonio de Vargas, we discover that in the common year 1473, he encountered on the southernmost portion of the African continent a civilization called Dilungotanga, a civilization that had thrived as a vast empire 3,000 years before a small farming village that was to be called Rome was even founded. In his writings, de Vargas relates that the emperor, who was called Sigisingui, had negotiated trade pacts with cities and nations as far north as Upper Egypt. The ever-expanding borders of this empire were guarded by one of the finest armies in the ancient world. But de Vargas also speaks of a superstition held by the inhabitants of Dilungotanga, a tale that speaks of a creature inhabiting an island just beyond the shores of the empire, a creature so large and terrible that its name in the Tongan language could only be translated as dark horror. They called it Golentor. Further, de Vargas relates in his journal that, quote, in fact, Tongan lore is filled with stories that describe islands where beasts from before the age of man dwelt, where creatures like Golentor existed in a perpetual prehistoric age. Whether or not such animals actually exist is difficult to ascertain. There is no doubt, however, that these people do believe that they exist. The journal here is indecipherable, and then it says, "We plan to find this island and discover if this creature really exists." No date is given for that entry. My best estimate would place it around the early autumn of 1473. Moreover, there are no known journal entries by de Vargas after this. Many have speculated, present company excluded, that he was killed by Tongan mercenaries when fearful priests learned that he was going to attempt to find the island. I have found little evidence to support this. I believe that de Vargas went in search of the island and in fact found it. It is what he discovered there that not only forced the hand of the Catholic Church, which subsequently removed him from the historical annals, but it cost him his life as well. You see, de Vargas discovered things about Africa and the antiquity of its myriad cultures. He knew that early Tongan magi had charted the course of planets and the position of stars 1,000 years before the European left the caves. He knew that art, trade, and warfare were all commonplace occurrences along the Matende River Delta when brutish clans were raiding each other with clubs and crude spears across the European interior. He knew these things, and he knew about the existence of creatures that were thought long gone. Rome knew that widespread knowledge of such things would greatly disrupt European Christian truth, so called by them, and therefore the matter became fully academic. And the centuries passed. In June of 1955, the Biological Research Department of the Matembo Institute of Natural Sciences received corporate sponsorship for a research expedition of its own choosing. It was then that I, Ethan Miko, entered this hardly believable yet true story. I was then a young associate professor in that department, and I took it upon myself somewhat arrogantly as I look back upon it, but this is the curse of the young, to suggest the island of Ojunda, which is the island of Tongan lore that de Vargas wrote of. You can imagine that I was quite surprised when the senior professors and the department chairman, Dr. Elo Takembe, agreed unanimously that my proposal was the proposal of choice. In only 3 weeks' time, all of the preparations had been completed, and we left for the island on the morning of July 2nd, 1955. The island lay 46 kilometers to the southeast of the mainland, and from the sea was quite unremarkable, save one item. This island, we came to discover, seemed to be blanketed in a perpetual curtain of milky white fog, all but impossible to penetrate with the naked eye. This no doubt gave the island its famed aura of mystery, and also explained why the island had been left largely untouched. Strange that de Vargas did not mention the fog in his journal. Also, did the fog cover the island then? The expedition team was composed of university department specialists. Myself as a specialist of animal evolution and isolation, Dr. Nathaniel Lentada, botanist, Professor Xavier Oquendo, marine and aquatic biologist, and Dr. Aaron Melito, zoologist. We also brought along a graduate assistant named Joro Ilani, whom we simply called Joe. He carried our maps, charts, field books, and other miscellaneous but necessary effects in a large canvas pack. We were each armed with an M1 bolt-action semi-automatic with 100 spare rounds per man. And I also carried on my belt a .38 caliber revolver with 30 spare rounds. To make the existing water supply safe to drink, we brought along pill-sized purification capsules that were developed in our labs. Each capsule was capable of making up to 250 cubic gallons of contaminated water drinkable. We hit the shore about 1 in the afternoon, then moved 1 kilometer into the interior to set camp. By 3 in the afternoon, our tents were pitched, and creased map lines were smoothed away by hand as we began to chart the possibilities for our next day's excursion. We slept soundly that night, and around midnight I awoke to the feeling of a cool breeze which came up through the trees and washed over us. Before I drifted back off to sleep, I thought about de Vargas and the legend of this island and what, if anything, lay in store for us. If you're enjoying this story and would like to hear it to its conclusion, go on over to blackwatermedia.net and click on the menu tab that says Become a Swamp Hunter Society member. And for only $4.99 per month, you can have access to the finest, most entertaining, thrilling, and exciting paranormal, supernatural, and horror story narration available. Explore an amazing universe of monsters, nightmares, and all manner of terror and creeping shadows with your Blackwater Media Swamp Hunter Society membership. Get it today.